Have you been wondering, when were we going to interview brothers who are currently in law enforcement? We're doing that now. We'll have our first law enforcement officer this first Monday in March 1st, and then the next 2 Mondays after that will be episodes with brothers who are currently in law enforcement. A reminder to make sure you subscribe so that you do not miss any episode, any other brothers between now and March and after March or anytime. Thank you for being a subscriber. Thank you for being a listener. Welcome to 365 Brothers, the podcast. I'm your host, Robin Shine. I am delighted to bring to you brothers from across the United States and from various professions talking about their life experiences, their wisdom, and a conversation that also touches on racial profiling in the United States, how pervasive it is, what the impact is. And remember, you can follow us on Instagram at 365 Brothers. Also, follow us on Facebook at 365 Brothers, the podcast. If this is your first time listening to a 365 Brothers episode, make sure you subscribe because you do not want to miss one brother's wisdom, one brother's experience, and their perspective on life in the United States. Today, we're speaking with a gentleman whose hometown is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He's resided in Los Angeles for the last 20 years. He is a producer, but he's also a media scholar. He has a Ph.D. in film critical studies, and I'm delighted to share with you Mr. Garrett Thompson. Welcome, Garrett.
Hey, Robin, how are you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get into the questions, is there anything that you'd like to share about yourself that will help the listeners get to know you better?
I guess the one thing that I didn't mention to you is that I'm also a music artist. So I tie my scholarship, my producing, and also my music all together. And we'll get into some of those details as we go through the questions. So I guess that's one thing I would say.
Wait a second. You do what with music?
I have a project called The Wake Up Experience, and I'm a hip hop MC. My business partner is the producer / musician behind our project. We recently put out a single called New Human, and we combine our media scholarship, our veganism, our love, everything that we believe in, we put into the music. So the project is called The Wake Up Experience.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started. Garrett, what's your favorite song or movie, either now or all time?
My favorite movie is definitely Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. To me, it's a film that has stood the test of time and is as culturally relevant, maybe for better or for worse, as it was when it came out. You know, for people that don't know the story, it's a hot summer day in New York City, and it takes place within a neighborhood where you see all the different people and how they interact. And on this one hot summer day, the racial tensions sort of explode and bubble over. And there's a situation where some police officers actually choke a young man to death. And so the whole story sort of plays out like the dynamics and the social interactions between these people, what this means when this young brother's taken down, things that are still like really relevant right now. Spike has always been one of my favorite filmmakers because his body of work is just so vast and incredible. He's done everything from narrative feature films to documentary films to commercials to music videos. You know, he's just if you look at his body of work as an artist, it's just incredible. So he's always been like an inspiration to me just as an artist. But Do the Right Thing is a film where Spike's never afraid to take risks. He's not afraid to be controversial. And that film to me captures all of those things. He captures the vibe of hip hop in it. He captures like youth culture. He captures like the idea of the urban space. There's just so many things about that film that I love, and that there are like lessons of life within that film.
You're making me want to go back and check it out because I'd forgotten it gets sparked off when a young man's breath is taken.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really intense scene actually too, the way they shoot it, and it's just a beautiful film. Aesthetically, it's beautiful. The music in it is amazing. The way Spike captures intricacies of the characters. Some of the characters feel just like larger than life. And if you look at the cast, it's like Ruby Dee, Ozzie Davis, Rosie Perez, Spike, Samuel L. Jackson, Martin Lawrence is in that film. It's like there's so many people in that film when you look back that became like really culturally important and relevant, specifically within like Black culture. So it's just a really great film. I love it. Every time I watch it, I just get so much from it.
So Do the Right Thing was published it was, put out in 1989. And it's about what sparks off when a brother's breath is taken. And I think about George Floyd, and that was 31 years later.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said for better, for worse, it's still really culturally relevant. And I believe Do the Right Thing is on the 100 greatest films of all times list. I believe it is, So it's like it was very successful on a lot of different levels.
That's a great film to reference, especially here. So what about a favorite childhood memory?
My great-grandmother, Isabel Curry, she had 18 children. This is on my mother's side of the family, and her family comes from Alabama. The homestead where she raised all these children with her husband has been in our family for over 100 years. And so,
wow.
And so every August, ever since I was a kid, because I've only physically missed one reunion since I've been alive, and I'm 43 right now. Every August, we would head down for a 3-day reunion down to Alabama. And it's basically like a two-bedroom house. So it's like very small out in the boonies, basically like in the country, and everybody would get together and they would just cook and eat and talk and fellowship and go to church and just really like reconnect, because so much of the family is spread all across the country. It was always a time I loved because I have a large family, and people are in all different types of careers. There's people that are blue collar, people that are professional, people that are academics, business owners. And every time I went, I would just get such a sense of pride for who I am and where I come from. And I can always remember that going down there, especially when I was young, getting to sit with my great grandmother for like a short period of time because everybody wanted her attention. And I was just like a little kid, but she always took time to like talk to everyone in the family. And I remember finally getting your time with her was like sitting with the Oracle from the Matrix, She just had this beautiful spirit and demeanor about her, and this really like soft spoken voice, but she was like very powerful. And I was fortunate enough to be able to experience her until I was probably early in my teens before she passed away. On the last day of every reunion, we would always get into a circle and sing "We've Come This Far by Faith." And every single year when it happens, I would always like cry because it just was such like a moving time to see my entire family there in a circle, all of us holding hands, raising our hands up together. So those are definitely my favorite childhood memories as a kid, just growing up,
Wow, that's amazing. Can't even fathom the connection, the joy, the encouragement, the certainty of one's own power from having such a ritual in your life.
Yeah, it's probably been one of the most consistent things in my life, and something that I always had to look forward to. The other thing it taught me was that our family's set up as a corporation, and we have a board of directors, which is mostly the children of my great grandmother. There's like probably 7 or 8 of them on there. And as some of them have passed on, they're bringing some of the younger people on to be a part of the board. And so for the past 2 years, I've been on that board. And so to see like the inner workings of how these brothers and sisters have kept this tradition going on year after year, because there's a format to it. There's a structure to it. Stuff like this doesn't just automatically happen. Like people put work in to make it happen. It's really made me like appreciate family and what it means to like put that work in like you would anything else, whether it was a job, whether it's a project. Like I've seen my aunts and uncles put that type of work into the family to keep that connection growing over all of these years, all the way down to great grandbabies. You know what I mean? And so to maintain something like that and to have that land and that home in our family for over 100 years so we all can enjoy it. And anyone in the family, if they decide to, they can go down for a weekend and spend the time there, but somebody has to maintain that thing constantly,
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so it just makes me value like putting time into something so that other people can enjoy it, so that family can come together. I feel really fortunate and blessed to be a part of this family, and I've learned so much from them.
Speaking of blessings, I asked this question in two parts. It's about accomplishments. First,
Mm.
an accomplishment that means the most to you personally, and then an accomplishment that gets the wow or So, which of your accomplishments means the most to you personally, Garrett?
But can I give you two? Because I have a personal one for me, and then also like a professional one that both mean the most to me.
Okay, go ahead, brother.
From a personal level, my the thing I'm most proud of was I became vegan on July 4th, 2017, which was 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
a little over 3 years ago. And within my life, in terms of what that transition has meant for me, in terms of my growth, my own personal development, my connection just to nature, to other beings on this planet besides just humans, spiritually, it's been the greatest personal accomplishment that I feel I've undergone. And it's really just broadened my perspective and my horizon and my love level on this planet. And whether it's in the music that I do or the projects that I'm doing, I always try to find ways to put a vegan message within that somehow, even if it's just like a little side nugget, so that people, one, know that I am vegan, so it can be a conversation starter. And also because I just really believe in veganism being a very loving way of navigating this planet. And so that's something that I'm very personally proud of. The other thing professionally that I'm really proud of is this past September, I did my first independent film that I produced. It's called A Little Hope for Chicago. And I teamed up with two other brothers who I went to film school with, actually. One named Kevin Nichols and one named Leon Lozano. Leon was the director, and this is Kevin's story. He's the actor. And Kevin created a one-man play several years ago where he talks about his story growing up in Chicago with a very loving family, a very caring family, a family steeped in Black culture. And somehow in that process, he actually wound up being a street hustler. Okay. Through that process of his like growth and self-discovery and coming of age, he realizes at 25 that he no longer wants to be in this lifestyle, and he leaves the game behind. He goes out to California and he becomes an actor. Well, parallel to this story of his like transition, he has a son that he had a while ago in Chicago who's coming up and takes the same route that Kevin did. Well, at 25 years old, Kevin's son was unfortunately killed due to the violence going on in the streets of Chicago. And so the whole one-man play is Kevin having to reconcile the life he led, how his son went into that same lifestyle, and how now he has to pick up the pieces of what that means to him as a man, as a father, culturally, with everything that's going on right now and politically. And so it's like a very, very timely piece. It's something that we did during COVID as well. So we had to find a way to actually make this happen. And we decided to rent out one location, one stage, and we put these three huge projection screens behind Kevin. And what we do is Kevin plays every role in the project. He plays his old self, his current self. He plays old friends, old family members, and sort of like a Eddie Murphy Nutty Professor type of style.
Mm-hmm.
And we put the visuals behind him, pictures from his life, videos from his life, social things going on in the times, news
Nice.
footage. We made this whole visual like experience of this man telling his story. And we're right now in post-production going through the visual effects right now. And this project is, I'm hoping, will be like something that really sets us apart in the industry in terms of the story that we're trying to tell and the power of it. So I'm really excited about this project right now. And soon the world will know about it.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see it. I'm enrolled already. And what about the accomplishment that gets the wow from others?
Oh, it's funny because I feel like based on my vibe and how I move in the world, a lot of times when I tell people I have a PhD, they're like
Hmm.
either wow or they're surprised. I don't know why completely,
Hmm.
maybe because my vibe is a little hip hop and maybe they don't expect it, but probably me having a PhD. And then I've also worked on like a lot of projects with celebrities and things like that. So you always get those type of responses too,
Yeah.
because people like shiny things, So when they hear their their ears perk up.
And that's actually why I asked that second question. I like exploring what are the shiny things to people.
Yeah.
I'll actually speak to for myself why the PhD gets I hear producer and I go, okay, okay. And then, the working with the music, the Wake Up Project, and there's a stereotype. And at least I have this stereotype that you're either academic or you're creative.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, for sure.
Right? But as I explore different creatives, especially African American creatives, I discover how many of them are like steeped in deep training, whether it be purely academic or years and years working with a coach in a particular profession.
Hmm.
Um, and so perhaps that's just one more stereotype to burst. I'll speak for myself. I don't think it's limited to African American creatives. I think we just have that bias in our society.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was like PhD. I'm like, wait, what? You did all that and you went to school? So I
You
get
know,
it.
what's so interesting about you saying that, Robin, is like I study like a lot of our great Black ancestors, essentially. If you look at people like Paul Robeson or Maya Angelou or Melvin Van Peebles or Gordon Parks, these were like Renaissance men and women.
I
They
know all of those names. Yes, I know them
were
all.
they were artists, they were musicians, they were dancers, they were involved in like the stock market, they were PhD. They had such an eclectic range of how they used their skills and talents and tools, and they didn't let themselves be limited because based on when they were coming up, they couldn't allow themselves to be limited. To be successful, they had to have their hand in all those different things because who knew what would work? You know what I'm saying? And so I
Yeah.
I like operate within that same spirit that I saw my ancestors do that became very successful doing those things.
Good point. As we're talking, here I am, I'm doing this podcast and I would imagine based on my own preconceived ideas about artists and who does what, that people probably would hear educator and, okay, yeah, cool. She teaches. And so now she's doing a podcast. That's interesting. When, I actually have a law degree from UCLA.
I saw that in your bio.
Right. And it's like, but I don't think about it anymore. And what I'm appreciating is how all those different skills help make being creative possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. Robin,
Go ahead.
from being in your law program, I mean, when you go through that high level of training in something, you develop a lot of skills that the average person who hasn't been through that, they don't really understand. Like you said, the critical thinking, the multitasking, the ability to execute like a thought, express a thought, write clearly about a thought, all of that stuff comes into it. And I tell people after like finishing my dissertation, I can do anything because that was one of the most challenging experiences I ever had to go through. It's like
Mm.
academic hazing. it builds you in a way that not very many things in life do. And then to have that under your belt is just something that you can kind of build from there. So
I love that you said academic hazing. That is so brilliant. I love that. But even when you talk about the veganism, when you talked about what you were gaining from it and the spirituality and all of those different aspects, I can hear now that all those many projects and degrees and study, it allows you to have a more critical, as in critical thinking about your experience, which allows for more reflection, which allows you to get more out of it. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that, Robin.
Cool. Let's talk about words. What's a favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book, and why?
Oh man, I have two.
Don't you tell me you got three quotes.
No, no, I don't have a favorite quote because that's too hard. I have two
Okay.
favorite books, or two books that I feel have been like really powerful in my life. Um,
Yeah, let's hear them.
the first one is Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Mm.
And I actually read that probably a year or so before I became vegan. And I mean, in a nutshell, it's just about embracing the present moment because that's all we have, you know. The past is gone and the future is yet to come. So all we really have is the gift of right now. And the way he expresses that throughout the book, it's in very simple ways, but very powerful ways. And that book
Mhm.
just really like resonated with me and has just increased my like level of gratitude for just being alive on the planet. So definitely Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And then the other book I love is Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. Yeah, that book, I tell people who are especially creatives that they have to read. It's a must read because it essentially talks about the thing that everyone feels. It doesn't matter if you're Oprah Winfrey or Michael Jordan or Jay-Z, everyone feels this thing of resistance whenever you're about to do something that you feel
Mm.
is important to you or pivotal, right? And so every day that writer gets up, they have to have the discipline to sit down and actually write. Every day that rapper gets up, they have to have the discipline to sit down and write their lyrics. Michael Jordan has to get up every day and like shoot those jump shots, you know? It's like, but that resistance that you feel, that voice in the back of your mind that says, oh, I'm too tired, or I should do that later, I should procrastinate, that the book deals with that so masterfully. And it shows you examples of people that have become really successful that still struggle with this thing. And it makes you realize that you're not going through anything different than anyone else. And because they did it, you can also do it. It's all about consistency and just being persistent and treating your art or your dream as if it's a full-time job, not putting it off to the side, not waiting until you're inspired, but just doing it as a practice all the time in your life, you know?
Well, I guess I'll have to put off the love money, money loves you recommendation from the brother I interviewed last week that I started. And I feel like I just need to read Art of War because I kid you not, you're the second person in the last 2 weeks. Anyway,
It's a quick read, so it'd be worth it. It's a quick read.
Oh, quick read? You already enrolled
Yeah.
me. All right. Done. So let me ask you, is there a person, conversation, moment, or event that stands out as either changing the trajectory of your life or had a significant impact on your life?
What's been the biggest, most significant, impactful thing in my life? I got to say, Robin, it was falling in love with hip hop when I was like a seven-year-old kid. And the reason I say that is because I'm a huge hip hop advocate. And it's not because I think hip hop is perfect or there aren't controversies with it. It's because I recognize and I see the power of one, the culture, two, the art form, three, the economics behind it. There's just so much that I have learned from my experience with hip hop. Things I've learned to do the quote unquote right way, things I've
Mhm.
said I'm not going to do things this way because of it. You know, I'm not going to treat people this way. I am going to treat people this way because of it. You know, it's just been like a hugely impactful part of my life, all the way to the point where I got a PhD, like studying this culture. The professor, Dr. Todd Boyd, who inspired me to even go into the PhD program, is a professor who studies hip hop culture as one of his disciplines, you know? And so to see a professor like that, when I was first inspired by him at USC, one of the, in my opinion, greatest universities in the country. Let's be real, Robin. I know you're UCLA person, but you know, we
Yeah,
got to
whatever. I'm gonna let that pass. Look, I can edit it out if I'm not feeling generous.
But to see Dr. Boyd in his class, a Black man with his style, with his swag, with the way he talks, with his charisma, how he carries himself, being like so steeped in hip hop and just having that on like that level of higher education and seeing that and seeing the power of that, or seeing like the Wu-Tang Clan documentary that came out, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and just seeing how these guys from New York put together a group that literally has like impacted the entire world. They're seeing what Jay-Z has done from a business standpoint, and what Kendrick Lamar has done from like a poetry and artistic standpoint, winning a Pulitzer Prize.
Pulitzer Prize, I know.
You know, or seeing even like Nicki Minaj, Lauryn Hill, Cardi B, like just seeing the power and impact that this culture has. I take it very seriously because I see how it moves in the world. And I also know that it's been a place for like youth who were outside of the system, who have been able to make a living, whether it's as an artist, as an A&R, as a producer, as a DJ, as a dancer, as a promoter. Hip hop has employed so many people who would have been outside of the system over these years that as an economic juggernaut, it's something to like really be dealt with and contended with as well, you know? So for me personally, it's definitely my interaction with hip hop, my love for hip hop, and what it has taught me throughout life.
You specifically said age 7. Mm-hmm. Do you recall, was it a particular song? Was there a particular moment? Is there something like that for you in hip hop?
Yeah, for sure. I remember I was born in East Lansing, Michigan, and my dad got a job with Hershey Foods when I was maybe like 5 years old. So I moved to Pennsylvania at 5 and was raised there. But I remember when I was like really young, I had a friend of mine whose brother was actually like a rapper. And so that was the first time I had heard anybody rap on like a cassette tape. And I remember when I first heard it, I was just like, what is this? You know? And I just remember how excited I got. And I used to play that tape over and over and over and over again. And the next time I heard something sort of like professionally, it was I believe it was Run DMC. And as soon as I heard that, like the bass kick and like the snare, you know, just the smack of it and the sound of it, and then their voices across the track, I just remember like that feeling that I got at that time period, I can still remember today. It just always like excited me and made me feel like I was like a part of something. And, you know, as a little kid, just breakdancing and, you know, drawing graffiti stuff and writing raps and everything. It just became a part of who I was.
Yeah, that's cool. What is a moment or event that either signifies or, you know, kind of puts a spotlight on your experience as a Black man in the United States?
I was in college and I had an opportunity to travel to Accra, Ghana, with this conference called the Global Awareness Society. They gave 4 scholarships to 4 college students, and I applied for one. My mother's been in education for over 30 years before she retired, and she also went on the trip with me as well. And so to be like, I don't know, I think I was 19 years old, and to be able to go to Ghana and experience the people, the land, the culture, the food, to travel to the Cape Coast dungeons and just see the history of the slave trade there in West Africa and, you know, the whole diaspora and everything. It as a young Black man, it really gave me a grounding in terms of who I was on this planet, and the strength, the power, the courage, the resilience, the determination, the spirit, the soul of the people that I come from, like what we have survived, you know? And I mean, I liken it to like diamonds, right? Because to me, this experience of being a Black person on this planet, there's so much pressure on top of you at all different levels, at all different times. And I feel like that pressure has really caused us to become like diamonds, you know, if you can withstand it. And we come from a people that have showed us how to withstand it. And that trip for me as a young man was just really, really pivotal. You can't even describe it until you experience it, you know?
Have you had any interactions with law enforcement? And if so, can you share one or two?
I've had many, many instances where I've been pulled over and quote unquote, let go with a warning, which all that means at the end of the day is that when they ran my license and everything checked out. I didn't have a warrant. My stuff was up to date. You know what I mean? Or I would have had a problem otherwise. Like here's one example. I was coming home late at night from the studio. This was like 3 a.m. And at the time I was living in West Hollywood, which is close to Beverly Hills. Okay. I don't have a fancy car. I had a Honda Accord, but it's 3 a.m. and I'm driving down the street. And I remember I was really tired and I had a baseball cap on and I had it turned backwards. And normally when I'm driving home that late at night, I always take my hat off because I know if a cop sees me with a backwards hat on, being a young Black man in that area, they may look twice or it may cause me a problem. So I always take my hat off. But for some reason I was tired. I wasn't thinking about it. And I'm driving and I see a cop that's about to pass me on the other side of the road. And it was almost like a slow motion moment where I was driving. I look to my left. The cop makes eye contact with me. He sees me. And as I'm passing him, I already know he's going to make a U-turn and pull me over just by how he looked at me. And so I keep driving. I look in my rearview mirror. He makes a U-turn. He starts following me, puts his lights on. I pull over into a gas station. He comes up behind me. I said, did I do something wrong, officer? And he said, you were swerving. I said, but I was in the same lane. I never switched lanes. He said, well, you were swerving within the lane. I was like, okay. And so he asked for my license and my registration, which I gave to him. He took it back and like ran everything. And then he comes back to the car. And I remember I had a toolbox, a little black toolbox in my, the front passenger seat on the floor. I mean, it was on the floor. And I had it there because I needed to take off my license plate to change my registration or whatever, like change my sticker. Yeah. And he saw that on the ground and he said, you don't have a weapon in this car, do you? And I was like, no, that's my toolkit. He's like, do you mind if I take a look in it? I said, go ahead. Fine, it's fine. So he reached in and he looked at it and everything. And he said, okay, just making sure everything's fine. Then once everything checked out, of course, he's like, oh, what are you out doing so late? I'm like, I'm coming from the studio. I'm going home. I live in West Hollywood. Somehow it came up that I had gone to USC and he asked me, did I play sports there? And so it just went into this whole different direction. And I'm like, man, this is all because at 3 a.m. I was driving in a place where it looked like I shouldn't have been with my hat backwards, you know? And so thank goodness from these circumstances, it's like my father and other Black men around me have they give us all the game on like what you need to do to stay out of trouble in these circumstances, you know? And so it's unfortunate, but a lot of times if you want to maintain your preservation on this planet, there's certain rules that you follow to stay here. You know what I mean? Because my life and what I want to do is much more valuable than my ego in those moments, which wants to just go off, you know?
Yes.
It's America, Robin. It's America.
Well, there's a community that Signal Hill, and I was raised in Long Beach, and Signal Hill is like surrounded on all sides by Long Beach. So I was like, that's near my school site just moved. That's nearby. I think I might want to buy there because, I'm not really into homes per se. A condo would be fine for me. Anyway, I'm driving around and I noticed, this is just yesterday, and I noticed that all I see walking their dogs on the street or walking down the street are white men and old white women. And I'm like, Long Beach is so diverse. Like, how does it look like this, except for that one park, Lookout Park, where people of any color are quote unquote allowed to be? And then I remember growing up and how you just knew. There was one year where a Black man that was hung in a cell in Signal Hill, 80s. And anyway, I just remember growing up, you don't go into Signal Hill because you're going to get stopped by the police. I mean, woman, male, Black, whatever you are, you're going to get stopped. And so here it is in the 2020s, and I'm driving around. I'm like, oh my goodness, how did I not connect that the police are basically saying, don't even come over here. This community is not for you, and how effective that is. That we don't even dream of living there because you get so used to you're not supposed to be there. You get harassed enough as a group and you're like, okay, so that place is not for me. And all of a sudden I just saw all the beach towns, all the places that we don't dream of living because we are so conditioned to find it to be more of a hassle because of that kind of policing.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, it's.
I had to take a moment just to think about what you were saying because it's deep and it's powerful, you know.
Yeah. I mean, and part of me was like, you just made all those connections, but it's like, it's so subtle. I didn't appreciate it. Anyway, it's so when you just mentioned that in Beverly Hills, I'm like, oh yeah. Signal Hill, Beverly Hills, Manhattan Beach. It's all a similar situation.
Right, right.
If the United States was a woman with whom you could speak, whether mother, lover, child, stranger, neighbor, friend, what would you say to her?
Miss America, Madam America. I would say I'm hopeful because on paper, you're such a beautifully crafted concept and design, you know?
Mm.
But in reality and actuality, I'm still disappointed and disheartened because I feel like you haven't lived up to your actual potential. You've lied, you've deceived us, you've discredited certain people, you've spread myths and stereotypes to keep people divided. And you've also made us across the board think that there's not enough here for everyone. I would also say that you claim to be about freedom, but is that really what you're about?
Mm.
So yeah, America and I would have a really tough conversation, Robin, because there's so much beauty in this country, and there's so much potential and there's so much promise. But at the same time, it's not offered equally to everybody. And not necessarily that it has to be, because life isn't equal and life isn't necessarily fair, you know?
Right.
But within this system, there has been a long history of building a space to keep certain people out at all costs. Just the idea of institutionalized racism and whatnot is something that I'm glad in this time period people are taking the time to understand what that means and what that looks like, because I think it's enlightening all of us on this isn't just like my next door neighbor not liking me or not wanting me to be in a space, you know. It's
Yes.
bigger than that, and its tentacles are deeper. This goes into like the housing market, the prison industrial system, like the drug economy, like everything essentially. And so when we understand that this country was built on that, and when we decide as a people, a human people, not a black people, not a white people, not anybody else, just as humans, that we're tired of perpetuating these things that have held us all back. It's held us all back from being what we can actually be. And so I'm also a person that like I'm very grateful for the African American experience that I've had. Um, and at the same time, my mother has always told me to never let anyone tell me who I am or tell me where I can go or what I can be. With that, I also am able to look beyond my avatar as a black man and know that at the end of the day, I'm a human being and I can touch and access anything that my mind, my spirit, or my body is able to. You know, I don't have to limit myself in terms of what people think my avatar should be doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's something I really try to stress to like young people when I talk to them or I put it into the themes of my music is that this skin, which is literally just skin deep, we're all people. We're all just people of different shades, human beings. We have different hues, but we're all human. I think people are starting to get that message and to really accept it and to look at ourselves. And I do feel like there is a lot going on with human evolution, you know, and
Yes.
it's like a
Yes.
really important and pivotal time. And I'm glad to be living through this and seeing it because there's some real change that can happen.
I love everything you said. One of the things that just really caught my attention was the way that you used avatar.
Mm,
Um, I think you said that there's no limits, no boundaries on what your avatar can do. And I can't help think about video games and how, in a video game, whatever avatar you choose, that's the one you choose. But how you play the game is how you play the game.
mm, right. Oh, that was deep. Yeah.
And so when you use that word in the context of a video game society, it's like, whoa, 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 that's so deep for me. Those words create a freedom that feels new.
Mm,
It's the freedom from being wholly identified by our skin color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because, Robin, think about it, right? Like, just think about your soul and your spirit and your conscience, your consciousness, right? So if I close my eyes and think about who I am just as a spirit, it has nothing to do with the color of my skin.
Yeah.
And the only time I'm reminded of that is A, if I look in the mirror, B, if someone else reminds me of it, or C, if there's, something that I enjoy or that culturally reminds me that I'm African American. And so we walk through this life judging ourselves and others and being judged for better, for worse, in good ways and bad ways by like the most superficial thing possible, which is the color of our skin. It's really ridiculous when you think about it. Look at all that has happened in the world because of this skin. How many people have been hurt, killed, maimed, kept back? We've done a disservice, we as humans, to this entire planet. It's like a team where you're only allowing certain players to play, but you got players on the bench that are great players. Like, they can help this team get to the championship, but you don't want them to because you want the championship to look a certain way. It's something that I personally struggle with, just in terms of my own self and my own spirit. I'm very proud to be Black. Like, I'm very proud to be Black.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I also know that this thing called race, this is all, it's human creation. This is just created.
It's a construct.
It's a construct, absolutely. And I think the more we like come to terms with that, to really see what that means and how that has like affected all of us, the better off we will all be. And the more we'll be able to actually look past this construct.
I imagine, what if you were playing a video game and you discovered that every time you chose one particular avatar, there were these things in the game you couldn't quite figure it out. Maybe sometimes you could, but that avatar never you can never get past a certain level. It takes so much more work, so much more game effectiveness, skill, strategy to maneuver in that particular avatar.
Mm.
If we were looking at a game like that, we'd be like, now that is so dumb. Why would you, you're basically telling me not to pick that avatar.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
But we wouldn't, generally speaking, I say this, we wouldn't tolerate, in quotes, a game like that, because that would be just stupid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then we live by it, right?
But then we live exactly that. So yeah, it's funny how one phrase can spark so much. Anyway, I thank you. That was awesome.
Absolutely, Robin. Thank you.
What is love to you?
I think this kind of goes back to the power of now for me a little bit, because to me, love is just like the beauty of the present moment that God has given to all of us. It's the ability just to like sit and like feel your own breath come into your body and breathe it out. It's seeing like the beauty of nature, everything that was put onto this planet so that we can then create something from it, but it all was already here. So to me, yeah, love is God, love is presence, it's connection between people, it's creativity, and just beauty in general. The beauty of it is it can cover so many things. Even just when I say the word, I start smiling. It's just a beautiful word.
Mm.
But yeah, love is just God. It's light in God to me.
What I hear in how you describe love is something that inspires awe and marvel.
Mm-hmm.
I love that definition of love. And as you were also saying how, it's so overused. It's like, yeah, like when I say, I love spaghetti. But and then what my mind went to is, wow, how we often hear how, quote unquote, the Eskimos have 30 different words for snow. And it's like,
Right.
maybe we need 30 words for love, maybe 50.
Wow. It's so true. It's so true. I read this article. It was either an article I heard somewhere. It was weird. It was talking about how Americans speak, and it gave some percentage on like how much of American like language are just cliches. And I started paying attention as I was talking to people. And it's so true. Like we use so many cliches to describe things. And part of it is because I feel like the English language is really limited in describing certain things, especially deep and meaningful things, because we just don't have the words to do it, you know? What if we did have 50 words for love? Or what if we had 50 ways to describe compassion? You know, like
Yeah.
how would we communicate differently? How would we treat each other differently? Maybe, I don't know.
I'm always plugging this really old website. It's called freerice.com.
Okay.
But when you go on it, you can do times tables, you can do English, and you just answer questions. And you have to answer, I don't know, like 70 or 80 to donate, and it donates a cup of rice somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can see why it never took off, because but it still exists. You still do it. And my point is, they have one on English. And when you click on that, like it actually raises the level. And I think it goes up to something like either level 35 or level 40. And I am pretty well versed with a lot of, I got a decent vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
And level 25, level 26, they start using words that I can't recall that I've seen them before.
Mm.
And it makes me wonder if there are sufficient, maybe not as many as we would think, but there are so many words, but we don't learn them.
We don't learn them. That's a good point. That's a great point.
We just, everything is so dumbed down and basic. And I say that as an educator, it is dumbed down and basic. And one last thing about that, I have a friend who's bilingual,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll be talking, and we love going like deep and like all different, just not your usual conversation. And we'll be talking, and he'll say, oh, there's no word for that in English, but here's the Spanish word for it. And it's like, whenever it's something juicy, like a subtlety, whenever there's a need for subtlety, we're more likely to find a word for it in Spanish than in English.
That's interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Which, hey, Garrett, we might be onto something. Maybe we could transform America just by increasing everybody's vocabulary, give them more opportunities for thought.
That's a really good point. That's one reason why I love like spoken word poetry and also rap and hip hop so much, is because like anytime I hear an MC express something in a way that I never would have thought of, but it's like it could be the most basic thing, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, I never thought to say it that way. Like poetry causes you to just like expand how you would actually like see something, hear something, describe something. That's the beauty of it,
For me, I like this phrase, it forces a cascade of thoughts.
I love that.
Man, we've covered so much. You've answered this question many times over, but I still ask it for, whatever else there is that you might throw in. What is something that you've learned through your profession, training, experiences, or adventures that you believe more Black men should know, but don't, knowing that whatever you say benefits everyone?
Sure. I have something that's like, this is a simple day-to-day thing. And I learned this when I was in my Ph.D. program, probably from my professor, because he was like so hard on me about this, I feel like in this day and age, because time moves so fast, the internet moves so fast, we're all going in a million directions at one time, that people don't take the time to like actually read, Robin. And I don't mean read books. I mean just read like the directions of something, or fully read a text somebody sends them, or read more than just a headline. Like we're in such like a headline culture that people don't take the time to look into information. But at the same time, this is the information age. There's more information at our disposal than any time before. Like if you took a week of your life and focused on one thing, you could learn so much about it just off of the internet. You know what I mean? And so in my professional life, it has really helped me to actually like read things, whether it's directions or a note somebody has given me, to actually read it thoroughly instead of just skimming it, because you miss so much when you do that, but you don't realize you're missing it. And because most people, I feel, don't fully read things, when you do read things, it puts you ahead of the curve. Like, you have the information at that point, you know? And so that's what I tell people. It's really basic and really simple, but just take time to read things. It's really helped me out personally, you know?
I will tell you, when you start talking about not reading directions, my hot pot is still sitting up on there unused. Those directions got so serious. I was like, and then you got to do this, and you got to do this, and then you got to do this, and then that before you even use it. And yeah, well. But it also speaks to my commitment to read it, that I didn't just try to throw it together. Well, no, I'm sorry. What that speaks to is the things I ruined when I didn't read the directions. So I hear you. And I also love the juxtaposition of that. Here we are in the information age, and yet we are the least informed than we've ever been.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. As a producer, when I work, because I have to send a lot of information out to like my cast or my crew or whatever. I mean, there's so many times where I'll send a short email out and then someone will ask me a question about something that was actually in the email. And I'm like, they didn't read the email at all. Like, they literally just didn't read it, you know? And it's just always interesting to me how that happens so often with people. I'm telling you, Robin, this is like, it's such a small thing, but it's so huge because so many people don't read. Like, I taught at Disability Services at the University of Southern California when I was a grad student. I taught there I was a counselor for 5 years there. Mm-hmm. And from the job, they had all of these different technologies that were used to help students with different learning styles. And they had something called the Kurzweil program, which is basically essentially a reading program. And now the computers and everything we have now in the phones, they do it. You can just highlight the text and hit speak and it'll read it out loud to you, you know?
Yes, yes.
But at the time when I was at SC, you had to have a program to actually do that. And so I used to use that program because I noticed when I was in grad school that when I was able to see the text and hear it at the same time, that I retained it better. And so that's something that I still do in my life, like constantly. It's just the way that I read and consume information. And because I've been doing it for so long, I can put the reading text at the highest speed and still comprehend it and everything. So the amount of information that I can get through and understand and be able to like know what's going on is incredible. And it just puts me so much further ahead in so many situations, whether I'm reading a script and I have to give notes on it to somebody. It's been like a lifesaver for me. And so
hold up. What is this? What do you do exactly?
I highlight the text and it reads it out loud.
What program is that?
It's on the laptops now. I don't know what it's called. It's like speech or speak. It's just an
really
app. Yeah, exactly. And then on your phone, I have an iPhone. If you're on a website, if you highlight the text and then the options come up for like cut, paste, and all that, one of those options is speak. Well, when you hit that, it'll read it out loud to you. This is how I read all of my stuff for the most part, because it helps me to like retain the information. So that's this part, like what I tell young people, when people like figure out what works best for them, like their learning style, it helps you go to like to maximize your time and efficiency with everything that you're trying to do. So it's just little things like that. It's like life hacks, you know?
Okay. So first of all, the advice you gave at the very beginning, brilliant. And then this additional thing about maximizing technology, because I would have never even thought of that. I don't use Apple products, but I know that odds are there's an Android version of it.
Sure.
I'm going to try that for the War of Art.
Yeah, try it. See what you think. Let me know how it goes.
I will. Sometimes when I do these interviews, I feel like I could just use the word blessed, but it doesn't really capture it. It's like, if only people knew how much all I'm doing is having fun and learning.
That's amazing, though. That's the point of it for you. It's like you get something out of it too. That's great.
I do.
I wanted to tell you. I was going to tell you that this has been like a really beautiful experience for me being a part of this, and just your energy and the way that you conduct this, the way that you've composed these questions. I think it really can get to the heart of like who somebody is in a really beautiful way. And when I think about it, to be able to do that in 10 questions, I'm sure was fairly challenging to make happen. You know what I mean? So kudos to you for that. And I just appreciate you taking the time to invite me to be on the show, So thank you, Robin.
Oh my goodness. It's like I don't even have to ask the question. Normally I would say, so what did you get out of participating in this interview? But you pretty much addressed that. Garrett, you've talked about so many different projects. How can listeners find out more about you? I'll have it in the show notes, but can you just give a shout out about places they can find you and your projects?
I told you I'm also a music artist, so I would love for people to go and check out the Wake Up Experience, which is the name of our group. And we have a video out called New Human. That's NUHUMAN. You can go to YouTube and all of the platforms and check it out. Yeah, it's just about love, connection, veganism, and just beauty. So please check it out.
I acknowledge your enthusiasm and your constant exploration. Who I'm left with that you are is someone who has no boundaries on what you will explore, what you will learn from, and it just ripples out into all these beautiful projects. If you didn't have the spirit of exploration that you do into all these different worlds, there'd be no opportunity for you to produce all these different projects and inspire us. I have been personally so inspired throughout this conversation. I can only imagine that you do that everywhere you go. So thank you for being a light.
Man, thank you, Robin. That means a lot coming from you. And I can tell that you're like a very in tune person because you'll analyze something in a few sentences and just hit the nail on the head, which is, it kind of gave me chills as you were speaking, because we don't often you hear someone describe how you think you are, you know what I'm saying? And most times people won't get it right exactly, but your description of me just being willing to explore and find things in all different types of fields and realms is spot on, and I think that's part of what my parents taught me, is just not to allow things to limit myself and to look into things and to discover and turn over rocks and not be afraid what you're going to find, especially if you're looking for the truth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, no, I appreciate that, Robin. Thank you so much. And thank you for your light. And thank you for this show.
Remember, you can follow us on Instagram at 365 Brothers. Also, follow us on Facebook at 365 Brothers, the podcast. Lastly, I just want to let you know, producing a podcast, it takes something, and I'm really grateful to have partnered with alitu.com. They make publishing easy. There's a link in the show notes for anyone who either has a podcast or is thinking about a podcast. You don't need to learn all that sound balancing and compression. Save all that. Use your time for what matters, interviewing and sharing the stories that your podcast brings. Thank you for listening to 365 Brothers. I certainly hope you enjoyed the episode. I encourage you to subscribe. Please leave a review. I want to know what you think. Also, if you know someone who would be a fantastic guest for 365 Brothers, please direct them to our website, 365brothers.com. You'll also find all the episodes there, 365brothers.com. And your support is welcome. And remember, to listen is to love.